business? Where is my agenda? If anyone's had a chance to read the minutes from
Can we
last
swear by you?
we can do that after we do the minutes.
Oh, okay.
I'm following the agenda.
Okay.
Has anyone had a chance to read the
You've never known her to follow
minutes
directions
and would
before,
like to
have
make
you?
a motion? You ready?
You want me to make it? I make the motion that we approve this is August the 3rd.
Those are old ones. We'll come back to those later. The ones that were in your packet. The ones that were mailed to you in the packet.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve the October the 5th minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Second order of business. Charlie, can you swear on our speakers, please?
Okay, if everybody plans to speak, stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're to make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Thank you.
All right, we have one old application tonight, S 2023-32. Elise?
This is a use permit for a private campground for the parking and camping of one camper on the property address 2616 Oxford Village Lane. It's not technically an Oxford Historic District as defined by the Historic Trust, but it is in the general vicinity of the neighborhood with direct access off of Oxford Village Lane. It's about a 0.26 acre parcel zoned for agricultural use. Staff ultimately recommends denial of the application. This is an aerial shot of the property. So the old high school is at Delaplane and Oxford Village. Kind of, it's not seen, but that long parcel in the top left corner, that is adjoins Cynthiana Road. So it's kind of in that tucked in portion. Also not shown is Newtown Pike and everything like that. This application is as a result of a zoning letter issued by our director after reports were made that a camper was on the property. So in the letter, he'd referenced it as getting a use permit for a private and public park and recreational area. So we understand that this is a camper that may be used for more residential use, but at least as it was issued by the director, it was identified that that was the best fit conditional use that they would apply for. The parcel is an undersized lot of record. This is the most recent aerial footage I could find, but unfortunately doesn't include the parcel lines. So you can see that at one point there was a structure on the property, and it is more heavily wooded than you'd expect, and everything like that. And they tore down that building. They've kind of tried to revamp the structure and everything like that. And a new owner came in and is now interested in building a residence on the property. It's not atypical for undersized lots of records to be kind of sprinkled in around the county, especially in near proximity to our old historic areas and historic villages. We tend to see a bit more of them because when zoning came through, it just kind of blanketed everybody instead of just kind of evaluating. And as such, like it has the rights of an ag property. It just is undersized. So if it needs building and those types of things, we take it under consideration at the Board of Adjustment because technically it still has to adhere to our expectations and rules of its overlaying zoning district. So the applicant is looking to store one camper on the property, and this is a recent photo of it on the property. They'd like to have it there while they're building the structure on the property. To staff's understanding that this is a contained entirely unit with water and sewer or waste management within the structure, and then taking it elsewhere, we'd anticipate or hope to go and get drained and supplied appropriately and then coming back. You can see there is electrical around it. I'm uncertain if it actually has an electrical tie-in or how it exactly connects to the system, but ultimately they're using this for the meantime between purchasing and actual completion of residential construction. With it being such a small lot, staff has a lot of concerns that you can fit an appropriately sized septic system, all the necessary equipment and materials necessary for important and necessary for residential construction, and then also the camper. Again, this is, while we do see these size parcels in the city, they're on sewer systems that are public, and so they don't take up as much space, they just have their lines, versus in the county where we have these areas where they are not perking well and they're getting a leach field or they're getting a septic tank or holding tank, and they need a lot more space for it. And ultimately, staff is just rather concerned about the condition of how everything's gonna fit together, again, to make sure that they all stay on their property and not negatively impact the surrounding character. Because although this may be a temporary use, it may be a year, maybe 6 months, it's still a use that will be actively used, and any activity on that property is going to be felt for the community surrounding. It's small, so you see everything under a magnifying glass. It's historic. The Oxford Village is very sensitive to development. We've recently started to kind of shift away the focus of development from Oxford Village to allow for it to retain its historic character. And just really any activity that doesn't quite match with the existing character is not entirely suited for this area especially. We understand that you want to live on your property while you're building, and that a camper is an excellent option. However, just again, with the circumstances, it just is not always the most feasible. Kind of getting into waste management, there's some public health concern if you're having it on a contained system that's not winterized, or even if it is winterized, like for extended heavy use, it's not entirely safe for the public health. If there's a crack, if there's damage, it can pretty wildly get out of control, and there's just a lot of concerns from that. Staff recommends that if it is approved, instead of foregoing the septic system until the residence is ready, they install it immediately, and they do not occupy the structure or cease occupancy of the structure until that septic system is complete. And so if there are people living in there right now, they would essentially vacate it until such time that an appropriately sized septic system and demonstration and compliance with health department rules is satisfied. That would then, after which we would want to see a hearing about it to say, okay, you've got the septic system, what's your timeline now? And kind of reviewing it on that type of basis. If after we kind of discuss it, staff, the board moves to approve it, staff recommends an approval, a condition of approval that it's only valid for a 6-month period before it would need to return for re-review. This is making sure that we understand what's the rate of construction, what's the plan, how's it going forward. We're seeing the impacts in a kind of time period basis where if it's starting to have a really negative impact, we're saying, okay, well, if anything, at 6 months, we'll come back and we'll say, this is what happened, this isn't well suited anymore. We understand what your circumstances are, but we ultimately have to consider the character of everybody else. This should cease. Or at the 6 months, you're saying, this is a decent fit, I mean, it's awkward, it's growing pains, but it's a fit for now, and they're going to be done in the next 2 months. So we can extend it again for whatever remaining portion of their construction process. I have kind of expectations is what I've called them, not explicitly conditions that I ultimately do reference in my conditions, but I've kind of explained them in greater detail in the staff report itself, where it just talks about expectations of what you're giving us at the 6-month window, that you're applying in time, that you're keeping the septic system in good standing, and all these kind of rules to try to ensure that this is hitting benchmarks like it should. It shouldn't be stalling once they get approval, if they get approval. It should be continuously, it's emphasizing that this is temporary, like I'm building a house. This is my progress towards my house. My foundation is poured, et cetera, et cetera. So we do talk a lot about that. Ultimately, after review though, staff finds that this isn't really a well-fitting use. This is a small lot that's in a sensitive area that there does not appear to be any connection solidified and documented in their application confirming that they're in good standing and they're constructing and operating appropriately. And there's just too many possibilities for conflict that staff ultimately doesn't believe that this is a well-suited thing. Staff concludes that the conditional use permit is anticipated to adversely impact public health, safety, and welfare. And the use of a camper as a full-time residence would alter the character of the general vicinity. You're having activities and things that don't fit, and it's not at any fault of anybody, really. It's just, this isn't something that fits here at this time. And a residence would work there, but not this in-between growing pain moment of semi-residential. Staff ultimately recommends denial. If this is ultimately approved, staff recommends 10 conditions. First 5 are here. I didn't speak a lot about it, but there's been no request for a variance, so they would need to adhere to the setback requirements. That's item 5. Items 6 through 9 are here, or at least a portion of mine. This talks about the septic system, talks about occupancy regarding or prior to the septic system. Before they can begin occupancy, they're checking in with us, they're having a meeting saying, hey, septic's in, I'd like to live here now until my construction's done, subject to the potential hearing. The 6-month period of operation where they are required to demonstrate compliance and continued progress, kind of preventing periods of non-compliance, and then once the residence is completely constructed and a certificate of occupancy is issued, it should cease residency in the camper related to this use permit. We have received calls about this. Again, Oxford Historic is a very sensitive community. They're very aware of their surroundings, given that they're smaller, and they like their character that they have right now. And so there's been a lot of people calling with questions about what is happening, like what's this doing here, why, that type of deal. And so a lot of that has been voiced, and I believe there may be some here that may want to speak to their feelings and their stance as a community member, as like a representative of that area. But besides that, that's all I have.
I think anybody on the board have questions for Elise? Not at the moment. All right, thank you. Is applicant here? Would you like to add anything, please?
I'm Connie Woosley. I live in Owensville, Kentucky. I began working at Toyota on April 26th. Thanks to being able to stay here in Georgetown, I have perfect attendance. Just found out this week we got a raise. We're going to go from $21 an hour to $34 an hour within the next 4 years. So we're all very happy about that. So hoping I can be able to build here. We do have the camper there. It is self-contained. It is winterized. We take it to Camping World and empty it. We don't shower or anything there at the camper. It's just me by myself. My husband comes down on the weekend and works on the property. He's cleared the property and been working on it. We've had the health department come out and they did do a septic survey. I wasn't aware. I'm learning a whole lot about septic systems, especially in Scott County, that you don't just put in a septic system. You have to have enough room to replace that septic system in case it fails. So in order to do that on our property, since it is a smaller property, the concrete that you see in the picture, we have to take half of that out. And then that's going to give us enough room for 2 septic systems if it's ever needed. And in order to do that, we take the concrete out, and then we have to level the dirt. That dirt has to sit there for 1 year before they come back out to inspect it again to see if it perks for septic. So it will be over a year before we would be able to even consider building.
So, Charlie, how do we move forward on that? If it'll be over a year and we have to have a septic tank in first, do we just, she can't occupy it till the septic system's in?
Well, first off, before I say anything, I noticed I have a stepson sitting out here who lives across the road.
Oh, yeah?
So that needs to be understood on the
Okay.
record.
Okay.
Well, how about before I answer that question, or at
Okay.
least attempt to answer that question, what kind of variances are going to be required just to have a residence on this lot?
None's been applied for yet.
The
Yeah.
standard ones that we see for undersized lots where it's pretty.
Well, but this is like a quarter acre.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
It's 5-foot variances, 10-foot variances, or like from 50 to 5, from 50 to 10 is usually.
not from 50 to 45, but from 50 to 5.
I would expect something along those lines, because that's,
Yeah, we're not planning on building anything over 700 square feet. It's just going to be me and my husband when he comes down.
But we went through this not that long ago with another camper, we said you cannot have that as a full-time residence. So if we're looking at a minimum of a year before they can even build, that would become a full-time residence for a year.
Yeah, that actually also had two of these.
Yes, yes, but I
Like
mean, one was
residences.
yeah, so
Of course, it was
that's,
also a 5-acre tract, so it
Correct.
had at least room for one.
I mean, the septic tank, to me, would be a huge concern.
It-
See,
Well,
would we deny or just ask her to like shelve this or like?
it's difficult because generally, most of these things are in place when they come in and ask for, you know, a 5 or 10 foot variance.
Right.
And then it becomes routine. Where it's not, well, where the dirt and all has to sit for a year, and that's assuming the work's done today, it's still a year.
Correct.
Um,
It's a year from the time that the dirt
Yeah,
is
the dirt,
leveled.
everything's in place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't see a path forward, do you?
Well, if the variances are that minimal when the time comes, there's quite likely to be a path then.
Yeah, then.
We really don't have a thing in the ordinance that allows this kind of thing. We have done in the past where someone put a temporary apartment in a barn or something while building a home, but the building and all was starting.
Correct.
You know, those things didn't have to wait, you know, like this. And in fact, they had septic and, you know, those
Right.
kinds of things.
Can I build before I put the septic in?
Excuse me?
Can I build before I put the septic in?
I guess you could build, but you still couldn't occupy.
Actually, as a matter of fact, we really, that's usually left up to the health department. What we're doing at this point is there is yet to be the variances discussed. There is no access to health or anything. Ordinarily, if you were just, well, put in the septic tank in the next, you know, couple, 3 or
Right.
month, that's just not something we even concern ourselves
Correct.
with. Obviously, this isn't like that. So if this application came in only as variances to see if in fact it would fit there, with, of course, room for septic tank and replacement.
There's room for a septic system, just not a replacement septic
I see,
system.
I see.
Because of the concrete pad. The concrete pad's almost 40 by 40.
How old is that septic system?
No, I mean, to put in a septic system.
Oh, I see
There's
what
not
you're
one
saying. Oh,
there.
I see what you're saying, yeah, okay.
There's not one there that we're aware
I
of.
see what I understand. So if this were only for variances, you know, that's probably something we could conceivably do and then leave it to the approvals of the health department. But I don't see anything under our ordinance which allows us to say, sure, pull a self-contained, winterized, whatever kind of RV, because that's simply not a residential use.
And that's what the application is
Yeah, and
for.
that's what
It's
it's
just
for.
specifically for the
Yeah.
use of the
And
camper.
by the way, I understand why the director put in that private recreational thing in there, just because it was an RV, but that really is not at all appropriate.
Yeah.
And now that we know, you know, the circumstances, you know,
Right.
that's obvious. Yeah, I just don't see an avenue
Yes.
at this point. There may well be. Of course, the problem then becomes if you wait until your year and all of that,
Right.
and then you come in and you don't get approval for
Correct.
variances, I mean, that's, to say the least, awkward.
Correct.
But could an application be made for the variances and she can still proceed with the whole building thing, but just not the occupation of the property thing? That would be a separate
yeah.
issue.
Oh, absolutely. That
So,
would
you
have
know.
to be, and I hate to even say this, but that would have to be yet another application, because we can only consider what's actually been advertised as the application before the board. And right now, it's just simply
Right.
conditional use you know, for this
Which isn't appropriate,
recreational
is-
thing, which is
yeah.
not appropriate at all.
And I had asked about any other applications I needed to do, and they said, just wait till I do this one.
And you know, and I'm sorry, I understand why that was said.
Oh, cool, of course.
I mean, sometimes I'm just a contrario. But I think the only thing we could really deal with, not today, but in a current application, is just simply gonna be the variances. Then the applicant would know, the neighborhood would know, they could deal with the only thing that we can actually deal with, and then you know where you go from there. Or if it's turned down, then you know that this is not gonna work.
Right.
But that's really the only thing I think we can do anything with.
So I guess just go ahead and have a motion on the current
Well,
situation?
have a motion or withdraw it with the idea, and tell whoever's here that's interested in it, that you will be back with an application for variances.
Okay,
And then that way, everybody knows what's coming.
But what
And
about
then you
the-
could actually withdraw the application for today, because it just simply doesn't fit under the ordinance.
But how does that affect her occupancy now, if she withdraws? Because if we
Well,
turn it down, she
the thing is,
has to leave,
The application
right?
does not permit, doesn't
Okay.
give permission to be occupying it now anyway.
Okay,
So,
so that.
and I certainly can't say that's gonna be ignored or that's not gonna be ignored. Thank the Lord, I don't do that.
That would be an enforcement issue
But
then?
that'd be an enforcement issue.
Okay.
But I think as far as we're concerned, at least my hope is, you'd withdraw this one, because we can't, I mean, literally, we'd have to just deny it. So
Okay.
it'd be gone today regardless. And then with the idea that, if anything, it just needs to be an application for variances.
okay.
And then that way, everybody knows what we're talking about.
Right.
Neighbors, board.
Right, and we
applicant.
plan on the home that we're going to build, like I said, it's going to be a small home, but it will be a white vinyl siding home with a porch, so it will fit, you know, in with the other homes that are there. It'd just be a
The kind
smaller
of thing that maybe
version.
even I could take care of.
But that's what we're hoping, but we're
Probably
not,
not,
but we're
but
not
maybe.
getting any younger, so we're wanting smaller. And we're wanting small enough that the kids and grandkids can't come live with us, so that's our plan.
We'll question you no further on that one.
So, what do we do? Just, you withdraw your application then?
Potentially was to, then she could do it now.
What would be her deadline for getting the application filed in order to get on next month?
For variances.
Right.
The 16th.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a couple of weeks
Yeah,
to get that in.
okay, and can I do that online?
Unfortunately, we don't have an online system,
Yep.
but if you fill it out and send it to us via email, we can. use
Okay,
the PDF.
awesome, that'll work.
Okay.
And that-
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
because otherwise, if not by the 16th, then it would be at the
Right,
earliest
right.
December.
Well, see, I have to get off work
Or,
early.
I'm sorry, not December, it'd be
I
the
have to get
earliest
off work early to
January.
come, so I
There
gotta
goes your
know
perfect
ahead of time.
attendance.
Excuse me?
So, any other steps we need to do then?
No, if
Okay.
the applicant's willing to withdraw it,
Okay.
then we'll just make that notation in the minutes, and then we'll just expect to see you next month.
Okay, do I need to go ahead and move the camper?
Yeah.
As I
Right away.
said, thank
That would
goodness,
be
I'm not involved,
enforcement?
we're not gonna be issuing any orders
That's what I'm
about
saying.
that.
Okay,
That's
good
good
deal.
That's an enforcement issue, and chances are they've got lots on their plate already.
Okay.
On the other hand, it may be that they can't wait to get to Oxford.
That's,
I don't know.
I understand that. Well, I don't know how, would they notify me?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I've
they're-
never
They're
had
not
to
gonna
go
come out
through
and drag you
30
off,
days or
no.
something.
Oh,
Number
oh,
of
that'd be
days
perfect.
No, no.
Yeah.
There'd
Oh,
be
that'd be
notification, there'd be a period of time, you know, to get moved. It-
Oh, that'd be great.
I'd be anticipating it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I already am.
Alright, well,
Thank y'all very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate
Good
it. And I will
luck.
do that. Well, thank y'all, and I appreciate it. I really like Georgetown. I've got a membership at the Pavilion. I've been going down there and swimming, and I got a gym membership with Toyota, so it's a really nice place and a lot of really good people. And we've met some of our neighbors. They're just awesome. Everybody's been really good. I know they brought me a friendship cake, so that was very nice. Thank y'all.
thank you, hon, good luck. All right. That was easy. Moving on to new applications. First application, S 2023-35. Elise. Question.
Yeah.
Okay, so, first of all, how is this application different from the one that we denied in August?
There's like a property transfer since August, so the applicants at that time sold it to the present applicants, who've now obviously brought an application before us.
Were these applicants, the new applicants, were they told of the situation?
I'm not sure of what was, the extent of what was disclosed. My understanding is that they were aware that something had happened and the previous owners had sold it for a reason, but I don't know exactly the details of what they were told by either the seller or the seller's agent or the adjoining property owners.
Okay, so, looking at the application, we make our decisions on the facts, not on the people. So has any new information come in on this application?
Nothing more than what was on the application form, so just the
Okay.
request and then the location.
All right.
Or
I'll
the
get back.
value and then the location.
Is the applicant here? Can you step forward, please?
Can I give you all just something visually
You
to
can.
look at?
And I have a question for you, please. Are you the applicant?
I'm the builder.
Okay.
This is Corinne.
Yes.
All right.
Good evening.
So my
Yes.
question is for you then. Your name is
It's
Corinthia?
It's Coretha. It was misspelled, but
Oh,
that's
okay.
been done quite a bit. Yes, I am Coretha Kaiser, and we are the new property owners at 251 Galloway. And yes, we were aware. We know, well, we bought from the Burks, and the previous owner was Terry Richardson Pretty, who we know personally. And Elise, you are Elise, right? Yes, I have spoken with Elise on the phone, but have not met her personally. But yesterday, the phone call came through from, did you receive the message from Terry Pretty? Yes. There was a misunderstanding according to Ms. Pretty. She is not here tonight because she said she would not deny or have any issues with us. As I said, we are friends, and we go to church with, I don't know if she goes by Richardson or Pretty on the documents, but she has said now whatever that my husband and I request, she is fine with, due to, I guess she knows us and so forth. And so she called yesterday and said whatever they are requesting, that she is perfectly fine with, and which is we're requesting a variance to the minimum lot width at the build line from 250 feet to 225 feet for home construction. And Linda Sebastian is our builder with Sebastian Custom Homes, who will start the construction on the home. And we met with Ms. Pretty yesterday, Ms. Richardson, and we have staked it off. And like I said, with us, I can't speak for the Burks and what their issues were with Ms. Richardson, but with us, she, as the message said, that whatever we request, she is fine with.
Well, it's nice to
Which
know
is
the neighbors
good
can get
news for
along.
us.
Okay.
That helps to be
But, I do have a
friends.
question.
Yes.
Okay, so when we listened to the application, we heard it, our decision was based on the fact
Yes.
that there is an identified buildable area that already complies with the zoning ordinance, okay? In order for us to grant you a variance, special circumstances for a particular property, which is not seen in the general vicinity, which would deprive you of the reasonable use of your property or create an unnecessary hardship, has to apply. Can you give us any additional information of why you have to build outside of that buildable area?
Yes, we can.
So if you look
yes,
at the
builder.
schematic of the property, that might help a little bit, and I've highlighted their property. On the front of this, you can see a shading. This property was originally owned by the Singer Garden Center out there, and they created, with the help of the University of Kentucky, some erosion
Yeah.
stuff.
Ridges,
Yeah,
per
I
se,
get
the
it.
ridges.
I know there's a specific name. So it's a very defined stair step on the front of that property. So if we try and come down and build on this stair step, it puts an unbelievable hardship on them financially to build the house up on this incline. And the one thing I wanted to point out is we're not asking, if you'll look at this, we're not asking for you to change it for the entire 5 acres. We only need a very small amount. The front little square will show you, which lines up with this buildable area on Joel's little site survey. We only need to come back no more than about 140 feet to get up out of those ridges, whatever those are called, the irrigation stuff or the erosion things that UK had them do. If we can get up off of that, we can actually maintain that look there. Get them up on a little bit of a flat spot, which would
Yeah,
allow us to
it's
do a
level.
normal size crawl space, normal porch.
Lisa, can you address what they're saying as far as they're saying that there is not a buildable envelope because of erosion lines? So I'll get on the same page here.
I mean, so you can, it's kind of hard to see with this aerial, but to kind of visualize, I asked Jay to make this in the previous one, and it's still applicable. I don't think there's any major changes.
Okay.
But there's kind of like a stepped system,
Yeah.
kind of starting at the road, coming up, and then the flat part at the top. And so, I'm not super familiar with the erosion control sciences, but, I mean, that is stuff that.
But you have plotted out, measured the buildable area, and
Yeah.
it is 100, you said 100 and something feet deep?
Yeah, so the distance from, so if you, yeah, I've included it in there, the Joel one, because that was to scale, so just kind of like.
Yeah, I used this too, because it
Yeah,
was a
it's
whole
really
lot
nice,
easier.
it's like super nice, you did a great job
Yeah,
with
it
that,
does,
really
it does
helped.
do good work, but
Um,
we're not asking for to go as far back as the Burks, that's the biggest thing, that's why you don't see that on the one I gave you.
Yes.
Because that is the biggest, which I thought would be the biggest hurdle, was to really go deep into that 5 acres, which takes us way back as it narrows.
Yeah, we do not
Really
want that.
getting into.
Yeah, but regardless of the depth back, I'm just questioning her because staff has stated that regardless of how far you wanna go back, there's a buildable envelope
Yeah.
that's within the zoning ordinance. So
Yeah.
if there is one, then we have to stick
Well,
with that.
I'm not even gonna say that you couldn't, but it would certainly be a hardship.
Yes.
That's what we would like to pinpoint, is that there's most.
What would the
assured-
hardship be?
The hardship would be on them financially.
$100,000 for a basement.
How much?
60 to 100,000.
Because they would have to change their house plan first, because they're doing one that fits on a crawl space with a wrapped porch. So this would put them further into that erosion that the area that's been built. So it would almost be a backward basement, if you can kind of
Yes.
envision that.
A
So the front of the
tall
house,
front,
aesthetically, it's gonna look, I think, terrible for the area.
yes.
You know, when you get a house that's that far out of the ground with that much of a steep driveway.
And a wraparound
That many
porch.
stairs.
Yes, and we have a handicapped granddaughter. I do not want to, I've been at Shriners all day today, and so we do not want her to have to climb steps or perhaps fall off of that porch, because it will have a very high front. And it's a beautiful home. Yeah, I believe it's got a wraparound porch, and
You can see it lends itself to a flatter lot. It's, once you get just maybe 145, 150 foot up out of that erosion,
yeah.
I mean, it is just stunning. up there.
beautiful
And then you
piece of
still got.
Yeah, I walked up to the top of the.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I trespassed.
Oh, no, that's okay. You have the right. Yes.
I did.
That's
But then I
where-
also saw the area that had been identified as a buildable envelope that was down there. Oh, I know, I mean.
You can, but you would be
But we
high.
we can't make a variance on preference for view. That's why I'm trying to.
Yes.
We're
Charlie,
looking at
Charlie?
the hardship.
yeah,
Yeah.
Charlie, now they're stating that there is a financial hardship,
Oh,
Well,
60 to 100,000.
as a general rule, in fact, the way the cases talk about it is mere financial hardship. Well, as we all know, there are hardships that are mere and there are hardships that are not. And just to give an extreme, kind of absurd example, if there were a clip face, well, you could do it, cost you more money, but that's not mere more money. That would be an extreme problem, incredibly difficult. At least as I'm understanding it, if this involves a house that's now going to look odd as all get out because it's
Yeah.
way up in the air in front and
yes.
dug deep in the back.
Absolutely, that's what
You
it
know,
is.
that frankly might do it.
Okay.
Because the way the statute reads is it needs to have circumstances that are unique to this property. I can't imagine these stair steps are all across you know, the east side of Galloway, maybe they are.
No.
No.
But unique to this property, not something that's common, you know, along the way. And it's got something that can't just be to avoid, you know, the application of the ordinance. It needs to be something that avoids a hardship, or even in the worst case, that would prevent them just from a reasonable use of the property. I can't tell you where that line is, but I've got to admit, if we had this discussion last time, I'm not real sure that it would have made a difference. Because last time, the way, in fact, I don't remember anything about stair steps. I really wish I had gotten out there.
It does, like, I think I was telling you, there's like three
Yeah.
things.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I
that,
didn't know they were.
frankly, I think that quite possibly makes a difference.
Yeah.
Now, as far as just simply money, you know, yeah, maybe not, although $100,000 is, I don't think I'd ever put a mirror in front of $100,000.
Yeah.
But you're also gonna end up with, you know, a product that, I don't think we want to do that. So,
The home would not be
anyway, I
appeasing
think
to
this
the
is something
property.
significantly different that just might well justify.
So we do have some
yes.
justification
I
here.
think this just might justify, yeah.
All
The
right, does
home-
anybody else on the board have any questions for them now? Are there any neighbors here who would like to speak?
Could I ask you all to do me a quick favor, just so I can put this in the minutes, because I'm the one tasked with putting this horrible story together? Could you possibly draw me a sketch that you can drop by there or drop in the mail or something, and we can attach to the minutes showing how the front
Yes.
face of the building would be affected, how, you know, how you'd have to dig extra deep for the crawl space
We
and
can do that.
whatnot.
100%.
Yeah.
Just to give a little illustration, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah,
Yep, we can
Okay.
get that.
yeah. If
attached.
you just visualize step, and that was, UK's Department of Agriculture did that for bushes to erode and wash away for the singers, but it's not a good spot for a house.
So you think there's any other questions that we need to ask? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and make
No,
a motion.
ma'am, I think
for
we're good.
that. All right, I was just kind of crossing Ts and dotting Is here because we have denied this application, and we
Yes.
always have to be very careful.
Yes,
Like I
ma'am.
said, we do not make a motion based on who the person is. We have to have some justification for granting a variance. From what the information you've given us, due to the cost and just the contour of the land does make it unique. Is that what you said, Charlie? Does make it unique where it has been
Well,
put
the
in.
topography, and
Yes, it
especially
is
artificially, you know, imposed or
Manipulated.
excavated
Yes, it was
or
manipulated, yes, it
Okay.
was, but
You know, for a private
UK.
commercial use, that's,
Yes.
I think it
So,
sounds significant.
We find that that is significant reasons to go ahead and grant a variance to, the lot width at the build line from 250 to 225 at 251 Galloway Road. We still need to take into account and subject to all the staff recommendations.
Yes.
Okay. I know we didn't cover them, but they will be there and she'll get with you. Okay. Anyone like to second the motion?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
All right, I'm sorry, Chair made the motion, or Vice Chair, and you made the motion.
I made the
No,
motion.
Oh, that's right, yeah, and you, okay.
And it's
very good.
unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you for explaining it to us. I'm sorry if I
Yes.
sounded rough. I just needed to, we have to make sure we have
Yes, ma'am.
justifiable
And first,
reasons.
in the spring, you'll see how pretty.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a
If
beautiful
you see me
home.
climbing up there to the top again, don't come out.
Yes.
It was beautiful up there, though.
Well, thank you. And we're gonna put a beautiful home with it'll be
Good luck,
very
guys.
appeasing to the environment up there. Thank you all so very much.
Sorry, but I want to cut the chase with different information. New information. We had to have information. Last time we asked them and they didn't supply us any justifiable reason. Yeah, but we didn't know. They had to give us the reasons. Okay. All right, thank you, guys. Moving on, next application, application S 2023-36, Justin Willis.
Thank you. This is a variance application to the side yard setback, specifically against the north property line, from 50 feet to 10 feet for construction of an accessory structure located at 1090 White Oak Road. It's south of Stamping Ground, south of the Elkhorn Creek Bridge, but north of Frankfurt Road. It's a 5.7 in some acre parcel zone for A1 agricultural use. Staff ultimately does recommend approval of the application. So this is an aerial of the property here. North of this is the Elkhorn Creek, where it kind of crosses in between Frankfurt and Stamping Ground. These are the findings requirements. We didn't talk about it before, but you made a lot of references to them, and I would have talked about it if you would have let me, but that's okay. Before we review variances, the board must make a finding that granting the variance would not adversely impact public health, safety, welfare, nor alter the character of the general vicinity, nor cause hazard or nuisance, and nor allow for an unreasonable circumvention of the requirements of zoning. And that if there's any instance or evidence that there is a request for a variance as a result of circumstances as part of someone willfully violating the ordinance, we should ultimately review that and deny that application. So basically, the applicant is looking to build a structure on the property behind the existing kind of front of the structure. It kind of goes up a hill, and then the house sits at a location, and then a little bit higher is where another flat area has been identified by the applicant to build a structure on. We kind of did some topographical review, so the blue solid lines are drainage lines, the kind of lighter shading is the floodplain, and then you can see kind of the way that the topography goes. It kind of goes from the northeast to kind of the central south, and then kind of down towards the creek bed. And so with that, and with such significant drainage areas so as to see a drainage line or areas that we would expect drainage to come through, we recommend that you not interfere with a drainage easement or anything of those sorts, so as to not negatively erode adjoining topography and trees and all of the natural environment, nor negatively kind of impact the property owners around you by putting a building in the middle of the drainage easement and then ultimately forcing water to go into places it's not supposed to, because under significant weather conditions, we see rain just kind of go where it's easiest. And so if it's straight through your house, it's going to be straight through your house. So we like to see them outside of that. The largest kind of flat area is where the existing residence is, and then kind of the second largest is around where that proposed building is located or requested to be located. The property does not have a significant topographical variation. It's about 7.7, which we've stated before, it's kind of the average for some of these areas, especially when they're really long. But ultimately, it's kind of not atypical for it. You do see that kind of significant grade change, though, on the south side. So really, the north side is the more appropriate side for things. Besides that, staff ultimately kind of, after review, believes that this is a unique circumstance and does satisfy the requirements of KRS 100.243 that I referenced before. Specifically that there's a lot more drainage lines than you typically see, and being located between kind of two creek beds, the terrain kind of slopes towards that, and interference with that would have a negative impact on those downstream. And so staff recommends, and actually staff makes the 4 findings here, and staff ultimately recommends approval of the variance subject to the 3 conditions we typically see for variance requests. So while this isn't a huge variation of stuff or of slope, just kind of the nature of the proximity and the kind of surrounding waterways, staff is recommending approval. We did receive some calls, mostly just kind of curious what was happening, and then saying when it rains really bad, they're just kind of like, the water just kind of takes the path of least resistance from point A to point B.
So they supported.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Once they determined that it wasn't against their property lines and
Okay.
understanding the terrain.
Any questions from the board? Is the applicant here?
Right here.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just my neighbor Round's here with me. Basically, I bought a prefab building. I didn't know I had to have a building permit, so we put it on the lot, and I had a huge walnut tree, and we kind of want to put it in the back of the property, and we didn't want to get in the roots of the walnut tree to kill it. I asked Round if he was good with where the building was set. We thought we were fine, and then we found out it was not set back far enough, so here we are.
Understand.
Yeah, so that's where we're at. But yeah, this is Round. And he came to support me tonight to make sure there, if we had any questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for him? Any other neighbors here to speak? No? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve S-2023-36, variance the side yard setback, from 50 to 20 feet, with staff conditions.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. All right. Well, that was easier.
Don't you wish all of them went that easy?
Yes.
Let's see, Charlie.
Next up, application S 2023-37, Irving and Kimberly Bullock.
Thank you. This is a variance request to the side yard setback along the north property line, again, from 50 feet to 10 feet for construction of an accessory structure located at 669 Finnell Pike. I'd like to note just kind of two discrepancies, one that I'll get to shortly and one that right now. In the staff report, I referenced that direct access is off of White Oak Road. It's not. It's off of Finnell. Those are completely different sides of town. And so I make a similar error in my findings that I want to mention now, but I will address it again at that time. But I just wanted to identify that there are errors that we did identify in the staff reports that we'll get to. Anyway, this is a 6.68 acre parcel zoned for agricultural use north of Cynthiana Road, south of Forest Path, and in a residential subdivision, ag residential up there. Let's get into it. This is an aerial of the property here. So you can see they've recently built a residence on the property, and you can kind of see the east fork of the Eagle Creek to the west of the property on the other side of Finnell Road, or Finnell Pike. Sorry, everyone changes them on me, I don't know. These are the findings requirements here. I won't run through them again unless you really, really want me to, but I'd prefer we just remember from before, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, this is this, I actually put these out of order. So this is with the floodplain from the Eagle Creek. So the front kind of portion is not particularly usable with that floodplain in there. They're not proposing that it be located in that floodplain area. They are requesting that it be behind the existing residence that's located centrally on the property. If we look at the topography here, you can see that there's a depression kind of halfway between the road and the residence. And then there's a couple kind of another depression on the south side. And then the proposed residence is the existing residence is in a pretty flat area already. And then the proposed building, they're kind of wanting to put directly behind it for a camper storage. You can see drainage lines again. You can see floodplain again. And you can see that everything kind of approaches, drains towards Finnell and then down. So it's not particularly uncommon in these northern areas that we see significant enough grade change that we would expect a drainage line, and then also having that floodplain from creeks. Finnell's been identified as one of the roads that is an oftentimes flooding road in high rain events. So that's just some fun fact. We went out and talked to JR with the roads department, and this is one of the many that flood pretty regularly, unfortunately. This is what was submitted by the applicant. So they kind of talk about existing utility lines with proposed connections made, existing water lines, existing sewer lines and leach fields. So you can see that most of the utilities are in the front, kind of around and through that depression area. And then there's existing electrical lines that they have that are from a property to the north to the residence, and then an extension to the property, or to the building to the east of the property. I would like to note that there's a lot of like kind of dotted lines along that northern property line, and those are significant because they're utility easements, build line easements, and also an access easement. We do see sometimes that these do overlap access and utility easements, and while they may not actively be used by current owners of both the tract granting access and the tract in the rear, they are there so that if your relationship with your neighbor fractures, you have a guaranteed way to get to and from your property. You have a guaranteed route for your utility provider to run a line from the road to your property when, in some instances, you are landlocked, which is the case for the property in the rear. So when this was subdivided, this was all kind of defined that these areas are for access and utility management. And whenever we have a utility easement or any easement, we like to, well, we always really recommend that you keep out of those areas. We're not changing a lot of earth mound, we're not moving anything around. If you're driving on it, you're driving on it, but we want these to be maintained and accessible in perpetuity because they've been defined as such, and staff never really recommends in favor of interfering with the utility easement. And being 5 feet or being 10 feet from the property line would put the building in an access easement, which we ultimately is essential to the functionality of that property in the rear in the future if it were to be subdivided or, again, relationships fracture. So with that considered, while we understand that there is a lot of grade change and a lot of areas that make it difficult to build in, ultimately staff does not support this request because we don't want you, it is policy that we do not build any utility easement unless you can absolutely not be in it or in an access easement. So that's what staff's identified. We understand that it may increase wear and tear and it may be frustrating, but these need to be maintained and respected, and so that's what staff ultimately is kind of taking that angle from. These are the findings. The amendment that I'd referenced before is finding 1. It talks about it being a 6.68 acre parcel off of White Oak Road. It should be corrected to Fennel Pike. I've included it and corrected it in the findings, and then I've also have a corrected staff report, but for your guys' sanity, I didn't give you a lot of copies of paper today. So just something to note for the record is that there is an error here as well, and that's rectified in the staff report, or in the packet in an updated staff report. Ultimately, staff, again, does not believe that this satisfies the requirements of KRS 100.243 and recommends denial of variance. If this is ultimately approved or a similar variance is ultimately approved for the project site, staff recommends 3 conditions of approval. These are the 3 standard ones we see whenever we are reviewing dimensional variances. And I didn't get any phone calls about this one. I don't know. Sometimes mail gets certain areas kind of weird and sometimes they don't. Yes?
I'm not sure you said it out loud, but I did read it here where you said that, I know you were saying to avoid the easements, which I understand, but you also made a point in your 3rd finding, there appears to be sufficient flat land to the rear of the building, which are outside of any potential depressed areas. So there are options. It's not just you can't be here, but there's also
This is just from our read of just topography that we can do. Even if we go out to, like, out of our interests, unless we're explicitly invited to come onto someone's private property, we don't enter private land. And so from what I can tell from topography and drive-bys, it appears to be sufficient. Whether or not that can be demonstrated as sufficient is not something that I can speak to, because again, I don't step onto private property. I stay on roads and I stay on road right-of-ways where it's reserved for.
No, there's a gate there, yeah.
For that, and I don't mess with that. So if there is some, there may be some. The topography maps may be incorrect, but there appears to be.
Does anybody have any questions for Elise at this time? All right. Is the applicant here? All right. Would you like to add something?
Thank you all very much for your time. I'm Urban Bullock, 40-year citizen of Scott County, 38-year business owner, now retired. My wife, Kim, basically she bought this farm in 2017 prior to our marriage and had it divided with the intentions of building our retirement home, which we have, and storage for our beloved camper is the next step. I have read the staff's finding, and I have multiple pictures here to demonstrate that there is no other level ground on our property where we can justify building this. If you're interested in looking at the pictures, I know the report said that there was sufficient level ground behind the proposed building site, which is inaccurate.
Well, I'm looking at the picture behind us. What is the problem with that area that we're looking at?
May I approach? a recent picture from my garage this morning. This is the proposed building site, and that is the land represented. This is 25 feet behind the building site with the 50-foot setback line. And then this is just another view of it. As you can see, that's also, and if you, the problem is if you go to the 50 feet area, then you're going to be getting over into the wooded area along with a pet cemetery that we have, and
It still looks sufficient to make. What do you think? I don't see any.
actually, if you go down to the 50-foot setback line, you're going to be back in this wooded area, which would require taking out trees. I think you can see that there as well. And the other problem is our other line, which I have demonstrated right here, if we move back, we're also going to be inside the setback line on the other side of the boundary.
You want the topo then?
No, I want that one.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out where this is in relation to that, because it still looks like you could come off that property line 50 foot, no problem.
Yeah. I might have put the box in the wrong spot.
This right here is 50 feet, this corner, little jagged corner here is 50 feet behind the proposed building site.
Well, you're not saying going that way, she's saying coming off the property line this way.
And if you come off the property line that way, you're going to be down on a very,
Here, pass these down, would you?
you would be down in this area right here
Which is solid rock.
and wooded area where it would require major excavation and basically destroying the natural conservation and the beauty of the land.
I'm just not seeing that.
This right here is 50 feet off the,
But I mean, that's nice flat land from the picture.
well, actually, if
The back of our
Charlie's
building's like,
probably
Charlie goes.
yeah, the back of our building's like 15 foot for you to build up.
So you're saying that the 50-foot line would be over in here, and so to build it over there, you're going down
Right,
that, down that
exactly,
drop off
yep.
and into the tree. And I've heard a couple of mentions of rock. Where's all the rock?
Our builder just left, and she wanted to speak about our rock.
Linda could justify about how much rock that we had when we built this. But I think this demonstrates a better picture here because this would be the building site. And if you go on back, you can see the slant in the land.
Do you see?
And really,
Not yet.
it's steeper than it looks, and you would have to bring a bulldozer
Yeah.
in and do
Yeah.
some major excavating.
How much is the drop off, say, from here
What's
where
the
it starts
topography say?
down
What percent of
into?
It gets
7%?
steeper as it goes down through there. And again, if you try to go any further back, of course, there's a slant up. But then you've got the other setback line over on this side,
Yeah.
along with the wooded area.
This one right here.
Right.
Yeah.
The other issue, the other issue that she mentioned a lot about was the utility
Utility
easement. When I bought the property and wanted to have it divided, I only wanted a little bit of land because I didn't want to tend to it, but we have to have 5 acres. But I was told when I paid for that plat that I had to include that, even though there will never be utilities there. That I
But
had-
how
it
do you
goes-
know there will never be utilities
The
there? If there's
20
land behind you,
The 23.25 acres behind us, which is known as Tract 3 on the plat, belongs to our son and daughter-in-law. There is no road access to that whatsoever, and the east end of it backs up to Harrison County.
Is
So
that what you were saying though, Elise? Because if they sell it down the road, they have to have a way to put a road in through
They-
their property.
Just because you don't presently use it for residential thing, by right, the agricultural district allows you to farm and live. So you need to
Right.
be able to have guaranteed right to live on the property, and that includes utilities and driveway connection.
Okay. So
There
you have-
is,
But how
on
can
my
it-
son's property, there is that easement on his property to go back to his,
on the other
his
side.
his,
Yeah.
he's track 2, but track 2 is in front of track 3, which he uses to go.
We have track 1 and 2 beside us. Track 3 is directly behind us, which also belongs to
But there's an easement on record. We cannot.
But it would never be developed because there is no road frontage.
Well, an easy fix to that, especially if we're related to the owners, they just simply revoke that easement. You don't need to leave it there and then say it'll never be used, because it certainly could be if anything's been sold. But there's other access that's not likely to be used. Well, let the current owners and you all enter an agreement that just revokes that easement. And then it's not a consideration at all.
It's wooded and it's used for hunting.
Yeah, it's basically hunting, and that's all it is. And there are no utility poles or no power lines on track 3 whatsoever.
Okay, well, hold that thought for a second. Are there
Okay.
any other neighbors that are here that would like to speak? Any neighbors? No?
I have letters from neighbors on both sides of us that approve of this.
So do we make a motion contingent on them revoking that easement, or do they just get that easement revoked and come back and we delay it till next month?
Well, you can do it either way. Let's assume for a moment that you're inclined to approve it.
Okay.
Then you could add a condition to it, that prior to any construction, that a document be executed that revokes that easement. Or you could simply say continue it a month and come back with a document. I mean, either way. But prior to anything being constructed, the easement. And the problem, of course, with that, and I totally agree with Elise, if there's an easement on a plat, you just simply can't know. Certainly with current configuration of ownership, it's not gonna be. But then that just means that's the time to get rid of it. This was a projected easement at the time the subdivision was made, because it might be needed in that spot. Well, it's not needed in that spot.
It's not.
Then revoke the thing, and that way it's not gonna come back and haunt somebody down the road either. I really don't see a reason though not, again, assuming you all were inclined to approve it otherwise, making that a condition.
Okay.
Because otherwise they just waste a second trip in and more, you don't really need to do that. It's approval, if it's approved, one of the conditions simply be that, that easement be revoked in a sufficient document can be filed in the clerk's office and it's gone, and then nobody has to worry about it.
So we would just go to the clerk's office to do
Well,
that?
no, you'd have to have the document, you all could actually do that, but.
Oh,
you'd
just
have
a
to-
document
Yeah,
between,
you'd have to have, just like you'd have to have a deed of easement to create one, or a plat, you have basically a, the same kind of document, except it's gonna revoke it, and it's gonna be signed by you who own the property that it runs across, and it would be signed by whatever tract, has the right to use it. Well, that appears to be, your son.
That's correct.
Well, nobody else, if it doesn't serve any other tracts, then nobody else needs to sign it. And that document would describe it, refer to the plat where it was created, you all would sign it, it had to be notarized, and then it would ultimately be filed at the clerk's office. So whoever does your legal work, I'd just say you
Okay.
go there and let them do it.
okay, great.
Because I don't want to tell you can build in an easement. That's not a good thing.
The neighbor that is directly beside where we're putting the building, she wrote a letter that she was perfectly.
Yeah, she was pretty far off the
fine.
fence. I went and pulled in your driveway and did my best to do this, so it looked like there wasn't any crowding back there.
She's gonna get arrested one of these days.
I need a big sign for my car that
If
says
you'd have
Board of
let us know,
Adjustment.
we'd invited you on up.
I'll come with a white flag.
And no one will see our building.
Yeah, it's not, but it's not visible from the
No, I
road.
couldn't, no, because barely saw your house and
Yeah.
figured there's no way I would see the building, no. All right, well, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve S-2023-37, variance to the side yard setback from 50 feet to 10 feet, subject to staff conditions. And we also want to add the condition that the approval is contingent on revoking the easement prior to building.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all very
Motion
much.
and a second.
Oh.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, next application, S-2023-38. Grace Point Christian Church. No, we don't know. Over the back.
Keep them
I figure they ought to know we're coming if they make an application.
What's up? Alrighty, this is a combined application for use permit, or conditional use permit and a variance. Conditional use permit is to operate a church, and a variance is to the side yard setback from 50 feet to 31 feet for addition to said church, located at 3185 Newtown Pike. It adjoins Scott County Fire Station to the south, and it is south of Eastern Elementary, and as well as Coleridge Lane. I believe Joe said that this was around the location of Double Stink Pig Farm or something.
Hog farm.
You know what? I got close enough. Anyway, so this is around that area. If you're familiar with the context of everything, it's a just over 5-acre parcel, zoned A1 agricultural, and staff recommends approval. So this came in as a variance application, and after review of everything, we identified that there was no kind of use permit permitting the church. And just to kind of get all the ducks in a row, staff recommended that they add just the use permit side of things. They've operated without issue. They have a smaller congregation that doesn't have a huge impact on the surrounding area, but ultimately just to kind of get, again, the ducks in a row so that moving forward, we can refer back to this and be like, yeah, we knew, we identified this, and we took care of it. Section 4.12 of the zoning ordinance lists churches, libraries, schools, hospitals, institutions as clubs as conditional uses. They've had church operations on the property since 2012 or around that time, and they had initially a smaller congregation, which quickly grew, and then they needed a variance in 14, and now they're requesting a variance now to kind of add to the church to expand the space for their congregates. The worship times are typically on Sundays. I don't know why the sentence on not used on the weekends is there. Sundays are indeed a weekend, and I apologize for that error in that regard. We've never had a complaint about it. We've never had a comment. We've never had concerns about it, which is a good thing. If we don't hear about you and your business operations or your church operations, that's pretty preferred by us, because you can just smooth sailing, or I don't know what else would be the circumstances. But anyway, I did include an excerpt from the sign ordinance for information purposes for the applicant, just about the types of signs you could have if you were operating as a church in the ag districts right now. So if they were interested in it, this is what they would be able to have in terms of freestanding signage, wayfinding signage, and
They have a sign.
yeah, they want more signs. Let's clarify. They want more signs. Like if they want signs at intersections and that type of deal, I did just kind of list that there. We've anticipated that it would not adversely impact public health, safety, welfare, or alter the character of the general vicinity. It's relatively active, a lot of civic group activity, a lot of services. Fire department's right there if anything happens. So ultimately, staff does recommend approval of that one. I didn't kind of make it its own slide, so I'm just gonna kind of power through. When we're looking at variances, we refer to KRS 100.243, which we've referenced multiple times already tonight. Sorry, recording. This is kind of listed out here. So they have the existing building, which was at one point American Legion's property. They built it in the back to kind of be tucked away, and they added in 2014, and now they're wanting to add again, and that's where their variance is coming from. From a practical side of things, if they're adding to the rear side or other side, they're gonna need variances for it. Just the location on the property, it makes, unfortunately, it makes circumstances where you need a variance. They could potentially do it off the front, but staff believes that that would be kind of create a disjointed appearance, kind of be non-conducive to that, would kind of impact if they wanted to build up in the front end of the property with a larger space as they grew. It would kind of just create a disjointed thing, and staff believes that just kind of an addition kind of to the side would not be a negative impact on anybody else. I do include a note that as consistent with other use permits that we've seen, such as Living Waters and all the others, that's the only one I thought of right now. Sozo Church also has a couple. Staff recommends a condition where preliminary and final development plans come in. We want to make sure that everything's being constructed to our standards for appearance and vegetation, and making sure that we're mitigating impacts potentially or fighting before, I don't even know what I was going to do with that one. Kind of getting things taken care of on the front end so the back end, it operates smoothly. And so we've recommended including a condition of approval, specifically the 5th one that would require preliminary and final development plan approval. That would include getting an engineer, potentially paving the facility, kind of just making some improvements that may, I mean, it would be at cost, but it could be a potential improvement for the site and the property. As activities and churches grow, it's going to become more and more important that we're making sure that they're meeting our expectation for facility design and support, and that type of thing. Ultimately, staff believes that approval of this application and for use permit and variance would not adversely impact public health, safety, welfare, nor alter the character of the general vicinity, would not cause hazard or nuisance, and is not an unreasonable circumvention of the ordinances. This is the finding, these are the findings here, just talks about making additions and circumstances, and staff ultimately recommends approval of the variance and the conditional use permit, subject to 5 conditions. The first 4 are typical for use permits. The 5th one is just talking about getting a development plan situated, so that again we can get the right foot out the door, and then we can kind of make our proper steps so that as hopefully the congregation grows and expands and people become more involved with it, they're able to support everybody in their needs and make sure that everything's scaled appropriately for their needs, so there's no issues. Besides that, I didn't receive any calls from anybody about it. So I'd assume that it's operating pretty smoothly, and hopefully it will continue to do so.
Any questions for Elise?
I have one. I see a letterhead in here with Grace Point Christian, and I see an application with Georgetown Community Church. Which is the official name?
The official name is, we're incorporated as Georgetown Community Church and doing business as Grace Point.
Excellent. That's what I need for the minutes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's 2 for 1.
Applicant, you have anything to add?
Just as a reference, I know that it was stated on the information that there was a variance given back in 2014. I had been going to church there, and that was about the time that I became treasurer. And I know, being on the board, we did discuss adding on to the building in the picture where you saw where the gravel parking lot is. Mm-hmm. We did discuss adding a sanctuary there at one time, and that could have been when that request for a variance came through. But no one that's on board right now could have told you that that was approved. I didn't even know that that was approved. So nothing was built.
Sometimes we approve them and they do not go ahead and do it. So
Yeah.
that'll
Yeah,
be the
so
first time.
nothing has been
Okay.
added to that property to date since we've owned it. And then that area where we're wanting to add is right outside of, we're wanting to build a children's classroom is what we're wanting to do. And so that is on the side of the building to where the restrooms are and the kitchen, which would it makes helpful little hands to be right there. Because our current classroom is upstairs, and so, you know, it's coming down through the sanctuary, you know, and all of that. So that's why we're wanting to add on to that classroom. One day down the road, yes, we would love to be able to build a sanctuary. That would be great. Our thoughts at this time, I will share, is going out towards the front of the building, somewhere out that direction. So,
All right. All right, okay.
I would like to add one item. I know you've mentioned that you just kind of didn't really realize the variance. It's still in play. Variances run with the land. So ultimately, if you decide to do this addition or you decide to go in the opposite direction.
which way did they do the variance?
They went it, I believe, I have the,
Did you say you were treasurer, by the
Yes,
way?
sir.
Okay, thank you.
they were gonna put, yeah, in the gravel parking lot, that kind of
That's,
like blue
okay,
area.
that's where I thought. Okay.
So you could go in either direction, you could go in both. But ultimately, before that kind of breaking ground happens, we want a development plan for the additions to it. So that would be engineering and
Okay.
those types of developments,
For
potentially.
any of it?
For any of it, yeah. We recommend that. if
I
this
do
is
have a
all-
drawing of what we're wanting to do with the, if you wanna see.
I mean, you're welcome to share it with the board if they would like it.
Do you wanna see
Like to see it?
I don't think you really need it, so.
If you want, we can kind of sit down and talk development.
That'll be part of
plan
your,
and
development
um,
plan when you do it with the
But
other people.
anyway, back to my point, variances run with the land, so if you decide to go north or you decide to go south, they're both in
Covered.
play right now for
Okay.
both directions
Yeah.
and going forward. And then if you ultimately don't, they'll still be there until you want to, because they run there forever.
You'll just have to submit your development plan, as she said, in
Yeah.
condition 5. Is anyone here else to speak against or against? All right, anybody have any questions for her? All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move that we approve application S 2023-38, both for the conditional use permit for the operations of a church and for the variance to the rear yard setback from 50 to 31 at 3185 Newtown Pike, subject to the 5 conditions of approval on staff recommendation. Second. Motion's been made and seconded by Ms. Holland. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, good luck, guys. That'd be good. All right. Almost there, guys, almost there.
Just not gonna have
Application
Can't everybody troop through it, because it's a lot.
S 2023-39, William Johnson.
Thank you. This is, variances for an undersized lot of record at, 543 North Mount Gilead Church Road. It's a big mouthful. I just would call it that small lot personally when I was thinking about it. They want a series of variances. I'd like to note that in the staff report, I reference, side yard setback, for the north side as 10 feet, or to 10 feet, when in fact the applicant in their application information references it to 5 feet. So it would be 5 on the north, 10 on the south, and 5 on the west, or 5 on the east. So kind of around, North Mount Gilead. So that is an item to note, and so, going forward, the PowerPoint will reference it as such, but the staff report references it incorrectly. Great. Yeah, this is a 0.34 acre parcel, zone A1 agricultural, and staff ultimately recommends approval of the requests. This is an aerial shot of the property. Unfortunately, I'm not able to find a more up-to-date one, so a lot of my photos will be just referencing this old photo. Since ownership has been kind of transferred to Mr. Johnson, they've cleared out all of the existing 2 mobile homes and are looking to kind of clean it all up and move forward and put a residence on the property. So these are the KRS findings. Again, with the smaller lot, we are expecting them to meet the 50-foot setbacks, given that it's incredibly narrow and incredibly long. It just there's no buildable area, so they need a bit of accommodation, and we understand that. So these are scaled for 5-acre parcels. This is an under half an acre parcel, so it's a little bit difficult, we'll call it, to meet with our regs. So this is kind of our proposal here. There's or the proposal that the applicants put forward. There's an existing electrical line that travels, kind of bisects the property with an easement on both sides. There's electrical poles that you can kind of see in the photo, but also there is an electrical pole on the property. And with that bisection, there's just, can't really build up in the front area as much, so they're trying to push the residences back, or the residents back, so that's the the kind of purple, kind of long square is the proposed residence and carport, and then the north portion is just kind of a storage building, just to kind of give it a little bit of space and not bunch up everything in one location. It's not atypical to see these types of requests. While it feels really significant, 50 to 5 feet is a pretty huge change. Again, given these circumstances, these lots are made before the ordinances came through, and they have the rights to live and farm. And so we understand that there typically are needs for accommodations, such as with the Oxford Village Lane one, like if it had a variances to it, we understand, and we see that this happens pretty regularly. Ultimately, this would pretty much make this lot usable, put a house on it, get all that type of deal. These are unique circumstances, and so staff is inclined to support the request for the variance and has found that it meets the findings requirement of KRS 100.243. My findings also just talk about undersized lots of record and that approval would not adversely impact public health, safety, welfare. I would like to note that Mount Gilead Church is this county-maintained road, so if they want entrances that are not pre-existing, they need to work with J.R. Brandenburg with the roads department. The primary driveway, at least as proposed, would be on the south side with proximity to the residents, and in conversations with the applicant about their conversations with Kentucky Utilities has requested some type of access to get to the electrical pole that they have on the property, so there may be a second driveway on the north side that is informally used as needed to maintain that electrical pole. Both of those entrances will need roads department approval, so they've been made aware that that's a requirement and an expectation. We don't exactly permit or number them, at least from our understanding, but it is something that we do want those both situated. We didn't really get any questions about it. Again, the property owner that kind of goes all the way around it there's like 3 pieces of mail that went out. So unfortunately, it really only went to one guy 3 times functionally, and then like 2 people across the street, and they're like, what? But we didn't have any feedback for it. I believe we do have the applicant here, so if you have questions for him, he can speak to it.
Anyone questions for Elise? Applicant? Got like you're here.
That lot's been there a long, long time.
Well, I kept trying to figure out because my little GPS would say you're there, but the numbers weren't lining up with the other mailboxes. So I'm like, is this really it or is this not it?
There's not a lot going on, but it's very...
But yeah, it's been there forever.
Would you like to add anything to what she said?
Well, I could have used some help cutting the trees. But this did not have a septic system on it. Does not have water on it. Was 2 trailers on it. And it was a mess. And they bulldozed the trailers into the fence row. And then they dug a great big old hole for a septic tank that was 6 or 8 feet deep. And, and then they had tars. We hauled 45 tars off.
Oh my goodness.
Tractor trailer tars. And we're digging garbage out of it.
So you're probably glad it wasn't bigger.
But we cleared the trees. And this is for my daughter, Kim.
I didn't sign in or anything, so I didn't know.
I live like 2 doors down. I got 13 acres. So she's gonna be real close. And the biggest trailer we can put on here is 16 by 52 because of the electric line.
Yeah.
And I tried to get the electric pole moved, but I couldn't get cooperation from a neighbor. Electric company said they would do it, which would have made the lot a lot wider. But we're trying to avoid the electric line.
Yeah.
And so I have some pictures. I didn't know if you had.
We got
They
it.
got them?
The application photos.
Yeah, okay. And you see how it's cleared on there?
Yeah, it
I
looks
don't know if
good.
you got, yeah. And it's been approved for septic naturally. But we were talking about, I didn't want the electric company to have to go on the neighbors to get to the electric pole. So we were talking about putting a drive in, a service road for the electric company. Because that way they can just pull off the road and do it. And then the other driveway on the south end would be for the daughter.
The carport, yeah.
And then I did have 2 neighbors call me. The guy that I border, he said he didn't have a problem with it.
Right.
And the guy across the street said he wanted to know who William D. Johnson was. And I've lived across the road from him for 20 years. So, but there's some other Johnsons out there. But that's about it. I mean,
They probably like it looking cleared out.
oh, it's
looking better.
oh, it's unbelievable. You know.
Y'all have any questions for these gentlemen? Is there any neighbors here? No. All right.
But if I don't get the variance, I can't do nothing.
You're good. I'll entertain a motion if anyone's ready.
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we approve application number S-2023-39 for a variance to the rear yard setback from 50 feet to 5 feet, and the side yard setbacks from 50 feet to 10 feet for construction with conditions of staff recommendations for 4 conditions of approval.
One of the side setbacks is to 5. She
The
corrected
5, that's
that.
right, that's
Two.
right.
One on the north side's 5,
That's right,
one in the back's
5,
5,
and
and
10.
one on the south side's 10.
Okay, you got that, Charlie?
I'm not even gonna bother putting it in there. It's in the staff report. That's good enough.
I'll second, second that? All right, we have, Ms. Holland made the motion, Rachel seconded it. All in favor say aye. Aye.
I just can't wait to drive by there, because in all these years, I've never seen it cleared off. I mean,
You would
period.
be surprised.
It has
It looks
never been
nice.
cleared off.
It really looks
And
nice.
I've seen it for I don't know how many
Yep.
years.
We got a wild cherry tree on the back, and 3 oak in the front, and that's it.
And that's it. Well, that's excellent. I can't wait to see it.
And we cut about 20 trees, and tore the fence down, and hauled tires off.
And I'm glad to see the tires gone. That's real, that's excellent news.
But thank you very much.
Well, enjoy.
Appreciate it.
All
I'll send
right.
you a letter tomorrow, and then you can take that to the building inspection office and be like, here you go. Okay. I saved you with Claire, but no one ever does it with Claire. I wish they bring it up that way.
All right, guys, we're in the home stretch. S 2023-40.
Let's go. All right, this is a variance to the side yard setback from 50 to 20 feet for a home addition at 1135 Anderson Road, off of Anderson Road. It's the old church that kind of looks like, yeah, it's very square. It's white. It's square, it's white. It looks very different from everything else. I think it's kind of neat.
It's cool, yeah.
It's a 5-acre parcel, zoned A1 agricultural, and staff recommends approval of it. This is an aerial shot here, so you can see the west fork of the Eagle Creek kind of on the north side, Anderson Road with a kind of small tributary through the property with a kind of crossing over it, and then the building, and then the very steep rear yard. These are the findings requirements. This is an aerial shot with the floodplain, so you can see as it kind of rose up, and then in the very, very top corner is Muddy Ford Road. So when we're looking at this, our main thing that we were reviewing was it's pretty significant topography, and it is. I mean, it has a pretty notable change from the rear to the front, so the more buildable area is in the front. There's an existing kind of gravel parking lot that was there when the church was operating out of the site that they could potentially review it under, but they've requested that they be a proposed addition in the rear, or in the side yard, kind of towards Muddy Ford Road. Ultimately, it kind of is, from a practicality thing, it makes sense. Septic systems and other things may be underneath that, as well as it's a natural kind of flat area of your driveway that you're using to use a driveway. It's a conversion of the church over to a residential use, so there's not really a residential space in there, so they're just looking to kind of tack the building on the side to kind of better serve the new uses on the property. Ultimately, staff finds that the application satisfies the requirements of KRS 100.243, given that it has unique circumstances with that steep topography in the rear and the building being constructed as a church and now being converted over to a residence. There's some more pictures. This talks about the findings here. I kind of already talked about it more. Ultimately, staff recommends approval of the application subject to 4 conditions. They return to us as the 4th, and the other 3 are just the typical 3 we see for variances. I did not receive a call about this one from anybody. I don't think anyone got mail, probably. We've been having mail issues recently, but not the point.
Any questions for Lisa? Is applicant here? Would you like to add anything?
I think she did a great job, so I don't think there's anything else to add.
All right.
We like it when people donate,
Yep.
so that's fine.
Y'all have any questions for the applicant? Or any neighbors here that would like to speak?
I'm here, but I was just here to lend my support. I don't have any problem with it.
Okay.
Y'all done a good job with that. It really looks nice. It really does. Yeah.
I like it. It's a
Mhm,
fun building.
mhm.
And we got a good name.
There you go. There you go. That's a lot.
All right, well, recommendations there from the staff and no discussion. Will entertain a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve S 2023-40, variance from the setback from 50 feet to 20 feet for a home addition, based on the conditions of approval.
All right, Tommy's made a motion, I'll second it. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion approved. I know. All right, guys, well, I guess meeting's adjourned.
I will be giving out the calendar for next year for approval and review.
Right now?
No, next,
Okay,
next
all right.
month. We'll do it,
It's like
we always do it in
unadjourned.
the December meeting, so
Maybe the
just kinda
chair will be
like,
there.
we'll keep it, at that time, go from there.
Good, because the minutes are closed, so we're not gonna write anything else.
Do we have much on the agenda next month?
Huh?
Do we have much on the agenda for next month?
On that Galloway. He gave you printouts on what.
Is there much on the agenda for next month?
Not that I'm aware of.
At night, we knew we were going to split the vote probably,
If we
but
decide to do something, then maybe we might have heard stuff.
Okay.
But besides that, I don't know of anything. I never really know.
I don't know
about
people.
shooting
I can't
before. That's
Okay.
favorite, so that you do.